Welcome into another Dynasty rookie profile where we are diving deep into the 2024 rookie class. Players that are going to be fantasy relevant, Dynasty relevant, drafted in your Dynasty rookie drafts, diving into the numbers, seeing what we like, what we don't like, and trying to just better equip ourselves for when you have your Dynasty rookie drafts. You can find the gems in the second, third, fourth round that hopefully puts you over the top, gives you a leg up on the competition. That's what we're here for. Like and subscribe as always. We're going to continue to put these out. We're going to get deeper and deeper as we go into players that are going to be potential third, fourth, fifth round picks in the NFL draft or beyond, and look at some guys that I kind of like that have some promising numbers behind them. We've already done two, Xavier Worthy and Troy Franklin. Both those guys are first to mid-second, late second round picks, and today we're going over another guy that's kind of a fringe first to second round pick, first or second round pick, and that's Xavier Legette out of South Carolina, wide receiver, of course. And I'm just going to share my screen now. If you've seen a couple of these, you know how it works. I share some stuff. We talk about some numbers here and things that I like, again, and things that I don't like. So let me just pull that up for you. 1 second. Here we go. And yeah, Xavier Legette is he's a polarizing prospect for sure. A lot of people either love him or don't, right? You either love him or you hate him. Hate's kind of a strong word. You shouldn't hate anyone really, but he's just a very, very intriguing prospect because the guy athletically is going to be off the charts. His combine is going to be amazing, and he's going to get so much hype after the combine. That's my prediction, at least. So let's just get into it. Things I like, things I don't like about Xavier Legette. 6'3", 227. He's a big, big receiver, much different than what we've seen from last year's draft class. Normally, we're seeing receivers closer to 205, 210. Xavier Legette is 227 is what he weighed in. And I think he went to the Senior Bowl. So these are pretty accurate measurements, I believe. They do the measurements there as well. So 6'3", 227 is just, he's built and he's tall. Athletically, that's, you love to see it. Sorry that the graphic is a little messed up right there. 2023, he had a big year, 71 catches, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's projected as an early second round projection according to Mock Draft Database. I've seen first round, I've seen second round, I think I've seen third round in some mock drafts as well, but Mock Draft Database, which compiles a bunch of mock drafts, thousands of mock drafts out there, and gives you kind of the consensus where he's being drafted. He's like an early second round pick. So you can see his numbers. Now, normally I put the numbers for their career here, but Legette's interesting. We're going to get to that. This is from his last year, 2023 season, his 5th year in college. A yards per route run of 3.15. I love to see that. Yards per route run, it's generally a good metric in terms of showing production and fantasy production and production on the football field. If you go and look at the top yards per route run every year in the NFL, you're going to see very familiar names, the CD Lambs, the Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chases, guys like that. So it's a pretty good predictive stat as well, especially if a guy's not maybe getting a lot of playing time, but he has a nice yards per route run. But 3.15 is great. We want to generally see around 2.9 or above, so he smashes that. His ADOT is good, 13.8. You don't want it too high because then you're kind of just a deep threat, and those aren't really useful in fantasy if you're just strictly a deep threat. You don't want to see it too low because then you're getting a lot of gadget behind the line of scrimmage, bubble screens, pop passes, stuff like that. So anywhere from like 11 to 14 is pretty good. You see his drop rate his last year in college, only 2.7%. I love to see that. Strong hands. And I'll get into a little bit, not just the numbers, but what I saw on film as well. And I'm not a scout or anything. I watch film and I see things I like and don't like and kind of match that up with the numbers. There's no one thing, there's no one number we can look at and say, oh, this guy's going to be good, this guy's going to be bad. That's kind of what's great about the NFL, about football, about fantasy football, is guys can surprise us. Guys that you seemingly have everything they need to be successful, they tank or they fail. Guys who are 5th round rookies like Puka Nacua come out of nowhere and set the rookie receiving record. So that's what we love about football. There's no one thing to point to, but we can compile, we can put together a bunch of pieces of the puzzle and hopefully make better guesses at who's going to be good and not. Yards after catch per reception at 6.4. I like to see that. That's a solid number. Good after the catch. His contested catch percentage is almost 48%, which is, again, I like to see right around 50% at least of a contested catch rate. Another, and I've mentioned this in a couple other videos, this last one, the CTT percentage is contested. How many of your targets were contested? And I'm looking more into this number. I think it's an interesting number to look at more and more. And to me, what it kind of shows me is how open you're getting. And a lot of times how open you're getting is a lot of it is dependent on you. If you're able to create space in your routes by your cuts, your speed, whatever it is, that's really good to see, right? So I like to see this number south of 20%. I love to see it south of 15%. Here we see for Legette, his final year in college was at 20%. So not terrible, but doesn't jump off the page. You know, again, want to see lower, like a Xavier Worthy at 13%. I think Puka Nacua was at like a 7% contested target percentage. So, you know, a little bit lacking there, but that's fine. Real quick, before we get into a little bit more snaps by position, he kind of played all over the field, which is another good thing to see. Guys who are fantasy successful, you know, are guys that can not just play out wide, not just play in the slot, they play everywhere in the field, right? We want to see guys be able to run routes out wide, run routes on both sides of the field, run routes in the slot. And it's more difficult than you think. I think it's like, why can't you just play in the slot? Well, there's some things you have to do. You have to be good. You know, a really good route runner. You have to be able to match up. You have to have good quickness, short area quickness. So, you know, Legette did play kind of all over the field. You see 66% out wide, 31% in the slot, 3% in the backfield. I added this. So it's kind of cool to see them use him in the backfield and things like that. He is a physical receiver. So could he possibly, could he possibly get some carries? He had some carries in college his last 2 years at South Carolina, 9 carries last year for -9 yards. But still, you know, he kind of has that Deebo Samuel build in terms of the weight, not the size, not the height. Deebo's shorter, but in terms of the size, the weight, I mean, you know, potentially he could get some carries and things like that, which we love to see for fantasy football. And then one last thing, guys, something that I think is really, really important to me. His career dominator number is only at 12%. We're going to get into that in just a second. Single season high was last year, 35%. His breakout age, which is another thing that we're going to get into, 23 years old. And then his PFF grade, his highest PFF grade was 86.9, which is really good. Xavier Legette, what makes him super intriguing, because you see the 6'3", you see the 227, you see the potential 4.29 speed. That's kind of what we're predicting of the low 4.3s, high 4.2 speed, which is insane for a guy that's 230 pounds almost to run a low 4.3 is insane. So if he does that in the combine, if he goes there, that is absolutely amazing, and some team's going to fall in love with him. And that's why fantasy players, guys who are following Dynasty, following these these prospects, they're like, holy crap, Xavier Legette, he's 6'3", he's 230, and he runs a 4.29. I want that on my team, right? He's going to be a workout warrior. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video. So something that concerns me though is this stuff right here, guys, is the breakout age and the career dominator. So again, career dominator is the percentage of passing numbers that you got, the receiving yards, percentage of team receiving yards that you were responsible for, receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. He was responsible for 12% only over his 5 years at South Carolina. He did nothing, Xavier Legette. He did absolutely nothing until his 5th year in college. And that is a little alarming to me. That's why his breakout age is only at 23. I don't understand really why he didn't do, and he wasn't more involved with the team at South Carolina until 2023. And when I say nothing, guys, I kind of mean nothing. If you go and look at his college stats from 2019, 20, 21, and 2022, 4 years, he didn't really miss time. I see, you know, maybe he missed a game or two here, but he was basically playing every game. He just wasn't doing anything. I don't know how much playing time he was having, how many snaps he was playing, but those 4 years from 2019 to 2022, he had about 400 to 500 yards and about, I think, like 40 catches. So he was averaging like 10 catches and 100 yards, 120 yards a season. And it just doesn't make sense to me why he wasn't on the field. And it's alarming. It's a red flag in his profile, 100%. I've been talking about this. I went back and looked at every single fantasy relevant wide receiver from 2010. And again, fantasy relevant receiver means you had 2 seasons as a top 36 receiver. The bar was set very low. every single fantasy relevant receiver, almost every single one of them, had a career dominator of 20% or higher of their college production. There's only 2 players, actually. 2 out of 78, guys. 2 out of 78 players since 2010 whose college career dominator number was below 20%. That's Terry McLaurin and Jalen Waddle. Okay? And only 7, I believe it's 8, only 8 out of 78 receivers had a breakout age older than 20 years old. That's it, guys. 8 out of 78 breakout age over 20. 2 out of 78 had a career dominator of under 20%. It's alarming. It's a red flag. And if you look at Terry McLaurin and you look at Jalen Waddle, who are both good receivers, we can't deny that. You can kind of make excuses for them a little bit. Okay, Terry McLaurin, he played at Ohio State. There was a couple good receivers there during his time at Ohio State, specifically Curtis Samuel and I'm forgetting his name now. I will find it out, but Curtis Samuel was one of them. Zach Pascal, I believe. But Curtis Samuel was one of them who I know he didn't really have the greatest or hasn't really had the greatest NFL career, but he was a 2nd-round pick. He was good in college. He's flashed, obviously, in Paris Campbell. I don't know why I couldn't remember that name. Paris Campbell was the other player. So Curtis Samuel, 2nd-round pick in the NFL draft. So obviously he was highly coveted, and he's been solid in the NFL. Paris Campbell has been a pretty big disappointment, but another 2nd-round pick. So he was playing basically his whole career at Ohio State. He had a couple 2nd-round picks ahead of him throughout his years. That's not making an excuse. He should have been able to get on the field, but you can kind of point to it. Jalen Waddle, obviously we know Alabama is kind of like the wide receiver U, right? Them in Ohio State and Clemson, right? But, Jalen Waddle, his time at college, there was a bunch of receivers there like all the time. We're talking Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, some really, these are all 1st-round picks in the NFL draft. So, you can kind of point to a couple things and be like, all right, I can see why maybe they didn't produce so much in college, those 2 players. You go back and look at South Carolina during Xavier Legette's career, and I went back and looked at this. There's only been 2 receivers that were drafted since during his time, since he's been at South Carolina from 2019 to 2023. And they're 2 guys that maybe you've heard of, but you probably haven't heard of. So one of them is Jalen Brooks, and the other one's Shi Smith. I believe both of them are 7th-round picks. Shi Smith maybe was a 6th-round pick. They were both definitely day 3 picks in the NFL draft. And we're talking 6th, 7th-round picks. So I'm just super confused when it comes to Xavier Legette for this reason. It's like, why couldn't you get on the field and do something? We're talking about, again, doing absolutely nothing. Here's his dominator percentage at his time in college. Let me not career, but just individual seasons, just going over this individual season. 6% of the team's receiving offense in his first year, 5%, 4%, 9%, and then 35%. So it's a couple red flags for Legette. We've seen plenty of workout warriors make it into the NFL and just not produce. Guys are running in the 4.3s and the 4.2s, guys that are physical freaks, and they just don't pan out. And you go back and look at some of these physical freaks, and one of the things that a lot of them have in common is that they just didn't produce in college for whatever reason. And that's what worries me about Xavier Legette. Again, breakout age of 23. It's a lot easier to be 23 years old and kind of dominating 18, 19, 20-year-olds. It's way more impressive to be an 18-year-old dominating in college. So, and when I watched the film for Legette, obviously, like the speed, the hands, the strong hands that he has, he can make catches in traffic, which is great to see. His top end speed is pretty incredible, actually, for his size. Takes a little bit to get going, takes him a little bit to get to that top end speed. I'm trying to think of a good comparison, but his burst off the line isn't like amazing, but once he gets 10 yards going, he's gone, kind of thing, right? Again, his height, his build is perfect. His ability to catch it in traffic is amazing. His vertical routes are really, really good. Pretty good. Obviously, almost a 50% contested catch guy is really awesome. He can beat press coverage in the NFL, no problem. He's pretty flexible, pretty agile, things like that. But again, some weaknesses besides the no production essentially until his 5th year. You want to see him just be overall a better route runner in and out of his breaks, especially routes that are coming back to the quarterback. Hitch routes, slant routes are kind of coming back to the quarterback, but like things like curl routes and hitch routes and things like that. You want to see a little bit sharper of at the top of the route, when you're cutting back. When you kind of round your routes off, it allows the defender to get back into it. Sitting down in a zone coverage, being able to kind of recognize where to put yourself in the zone coverage. You're not just running a route like, this is what we practice it to be in practice, but you want to recognize how the zone is playing out on the defense and be able to find that hole in the coverage. I feel like he can do better at that. But the physical stuff is there, guys, and that's what makes him super, super intriguing. So in terms of what I think for Xavier Legette, when I'm in my Dynasty rookie draft, I'm going to value guys like Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin, just from right now over him. Again, it's February 18th. So much can change. Combine hasn't happened. Obviously, the NFL draft is still months away. And you always have to kind of respect draft capital as well. Like if Xavier Worthy goes in the late 3rd and Xavier Legette is a 1st-round pick, I'm not going to take Worthy over Legette because I have to recognize draft capital. And you're kind of putting your trust a little bit in the NFL, the teams and their scouts. They're the professionals, right? I got to trust them to a certain extent. But if we're talking about like Worthy, Troy Franklin, and Legette are within 10 to 15 picks of each other in that late 1st, early 2nd range, I'm going to lean those guys over someone like Legette because it's a little hard for me to get past the lack of production. So again, you look at almost every single productive receiver in the NFL over the last 15 years, whether it's through fantasy or real football. And again, if you're good in fantasy, you're good in real football, in terms of putting up numbers. Every relevant wide receiver over the last 15 years, the one thing they all have in common is not their 40 time, it's not their size, it's not their, their advanced stats and things like that. It's production. It's did you produce in college? Again, only 2 guys over the last 15 years out of 78 receivers who have had a career dominator under 20%, less than 20% of their team's receiving yards in their college careers. So it's tough with Legette again. I think he's going to get a lot of hype. He's going to have a great combine. His explosiveness, his broad jump, his vertical, his 40 time, all this stuff is going to be awesome. And some people are going to fall in love with him. Someone in the NFL is going to say, I can work with that. Right? We can make this work. We can make 4.29 speed at 6'3", 230 work. So it's going to be very interesting to follow where he goes. I think right now he probably falls in my top 10, Dynasty rookie receivers. Again, this is very flexible, especially once you get past, wide receivers 4 and 5. Lots of things can change depending on where they get drafted. So hopefully that helps you guys a little bit. Go back and look at Legette and kind of, just figure out some of the things that why he didn't produce. Watch the film, match the numbers to the film. Again, there's no one thing that you can point to and say you're going to be good, you're going to be bad, because we can't measure a lot of things like heart. But we're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. One last thing I did mean to bring up, I did read that Legette, his last year in high school, was played quarterback for his high school team because their quarterback got injured, I believe. And so they just put their best athlete at quarterback, essentially. So I don't know if that kind of affected his development a little bit, but he was a 3-star recruit, I believe. And I think he had a 4-star grade according to 247 Sports. So, it's not like he was a 1-star prospect coming in, had to learn the position. This guy was a pretty, 3-star recruit is no joke. So that's it for you guys. Interested to see. Let me know in the comments what you think about Xavier Legette, and do you think I'm just completely wrong in my worries about him? So as always, like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.